So the next section is roles and responsibilities. So the workshop goal and format stayed the same. We'll give an overview of that right here. So we finished membership. Now we're going to talk about roles and responsibilities. And then in the next section, we'll put it all together. Same format, presentation. I'll present to you for 25 minutes or so. Then a table discussion. And then we'll sharing best practices and come back to the group, which was really good in the last section. So here on roles and responsibilities. Can you all hear me? Good. So the Parish Finance Council monitors the resources for support of the parish's mission. So there's two main councils within the parish, right? The first is the Finance Council. The second is the Pastoral Council. So the Finance Council, if you want to, put its guardrails up, that's going to be administration and resource mission support, right? And then the Pastoral Council will be policy and mission. But I've added, you can see here, an orange connector, right? And that's for a recommendation for cross-pollination between the two groups, right? Now, if anybody sets or does that cross-pollination, that individual would be ex officio on the other board, or not board, but council. Does that make sense? And if you think of the advantage to that, is that a pastoral council, if something came up where they were wanting to plan something that was going to cost money, if you will, the finance council can help guide that as to what possible availabilities, the process to getting with Father, all of those things. Again, the keys to success with the Finance Council is understanding that collaboration, cross-pollination on an ex officio basis is great. And then as well, other areas to consider cross-pollination would be the school. If you don't have your school Finance Council combined with the parish, then add a member on that side. Other ministries, large ministries in the parish, besides schools, there's some in the diocese that have very robust ministries where it would be good to have somebody, assisting if they have a separate, Finance Council meeting, things like that, or sub-meeting. And then other missions and groups. Any questions? So in roles and responsibilities, the next area is there's really, when you talk about a parish, and this is the USCCB, this is covered in the USCCB guidelines, it's in our guidelines, it's also part of canon law where it's drawn, and basically at the parish there's 3 acts of administration. So there's the ordinary, which are transactions and expenditures necessary for the daily and routine operation and maintenance of the parish. This is kind of business as usual. Daily operations, collecting offertory, depositing offertory, payroll, keeping the lights on, keeping the grass mowed, keeping the facility, basic maintenance on the facility up to date, right? Extraordinary acts. These are those acts that exceed the threshold established by the bishop. In the diocese, the level of administration that the bishops set is $25,000. So, but it's also a sliding scale for the smaller parishes. What we use, because it's supposed to be based on other continuous income, what we use is your annual OCA letter. So if you're a small parish and your annual OCA letter says your contribution income was north of $500,000, then you're set. You're at the $25,000 threshold. If you're a parish that's below that, then just reach out to us and we'll kind of guide you as to what the things that you should reach out for help and support. And we'll go more into that in just a second. And then alienation. That's the act that includes a transfer or conveyance of ownership that may place the patrimonial estate of the parish, the juridic person, in jeopardy of being lost. These acts usually entail transactions such as encumbering the property with debt, mortgaging it, or giving up a significant part of control over operations. Father John, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is there anything that I missed there, or is there anything we should add with respect to alienation that parishes should watch out for?
Basically, if you're getting rid of anything, you should come to this.
Good rule of thumb. Anything that's substantial, right, Father?
Yep.
All right, any questions on these? Just the overall, the overview? let's go into the breakdown then. Let's talk about ordinary administration and some of the roles and responsibilities of Finance Council members. So the Finance Council's first responsibility is to foster and support excellence in parish operations. So starting at the top, the annual report. And that's not just your annual report that comes to the diocese, that's also the annual report out to the parishioners. So in shared services, we've been supporting the parishes and producing those reports. There's a couple of parishes. There's at least one parish that I know in the diocese. There's 2 parishes in the diocese that get an annual audit, a real audit. Well, and they share that in their bulletin each year. That's a great level of transparency to the parishioners, right? If you're not on the audit level, that's fine, but I think you should at least come up with, and it doesn't have to be a detail of every account, but there should be some kind of an annual report, you know, as required by canon law going out to the parishioners. And that's where the Finance Council can help. Help field questions, help come up with a template, things like that. The next is the annual budget. So technically, the budget has to come to the Chancery by June 1st. Right? But it also, there should be some kind of a budget report that goes out to the parishioners. You could combine the two, right? So that you're giving some kind of an overview to the parishioners as to what your, you know, annual results were and what you're planning to do for the next year. Now, if you go down here to the financial review, that's really the monthly blocking and tackling, reading financial statements. That's going through the balance sheet, that's going through the statement activities, that's looking at the monthly trends, that's looking at comparison to prior periods. All that where you as finance folks are going to add value and look and notice trends and highlight them for Father. But in this process between the annual budget and the financial review, if there is anything that comes up where you go, Father, you know, I don't see where we can pull back operations or where you can, but so maybe there has to be a focus on stewardship. And that's where, you know, the Finance Council would be that arm that can help Father in that. And that's getting the expertise in the council to help, you know, foster and work with that. I know the foundation has offertory enhancement and other programs, so it could be collaborating with them. There's a couple parishes in the diocese. Mary Mag's here. They're one that focuses very heavily on stewardship. And Blessed Trinity in Ocala does as well. So, you know, there's a couple of areas where the finance councils are very involved with that stewardship function. Next is, we touched just briefly on the financial review, now the accounting. Now you see there's a separation here that I've placed between accounting and internal controls. And the reason why is the following. Accounting, for the purposes of the Finance Council, is understanding your accounting system, your accounting processes, and such. So the internal controls are going to be more where the Finance Council can give some compensation with respect to if there's a segregation of duty issues. So on the accounting, that's going to be understanding the processes at the local, not the internal controls, but the processes for collecting funds, putting them in the bank, things like that, right? And then also dispersing. Backup for reconciliations, you know, helping if there's not sufficient staff members. Maybe there's a Finance Council member that'll go in and, you know, overview reconciliations with the accountant, things like that. If you're on shared services, that would be bringing your Finance Council member up to speed as to our processes, what we do, kind of have them looking over things on a monthly basis similar to what you would if you weren't on shared services. No real change there. Understanding the process, maybe helping in the flash report review, things like that. Then when we move up to internal controls, really what I wanted to focus on here is go back to what we pointed out. The internal controls is our deficient area in the parishes. And I went through some of the reports from last year. So we have the tamper bag policy. It seemed like every parish that had a number of control findings, they were there. We touched on it at the budget workshop. In your table discussion later, if we didn't touch on it enough, let us know, and we'll figure out how to get you more support there for you in the Finance Council. Other areas of collection, you know, not just offertory, but there's other areas of collection that pop up in this control issue. The count teams, how they're structured, how they operate, where they count. The disbursement process can sometimes lead to controls issues with respect to the process that's followed not being documented well. And then last but not least, the checklist that we'll go over for major Finance Council activities that we'll go over in the meeting section. Oh no, actually on the next page. So there. So the other point I wanted to make here is on the internal controls, you get inspected every 3 years. So people always want to do what's expected, but they certainly want to do what's inspected, frequently, right? And so what we find at some of the parishes is they'll be, if it's their year for review, they'll get really good on the controls. And then they'll kind of fall off, right? And then they'll improve, get ready for the next review. What would be really great is, as a finance council, when you review those reports and you identify, hey, there's some areas here, don't try to do it all at once. Pick kind of some of the larger areas of reoccurrence, focus on them, and then just work gently and collaboratively with parish and staff to make those changes and improvements. And remember, the church has been around for 2,000 plus years, so finance councils aren't going to change overnight, and parish operations aren't going to change overnight. So just be patient, but have a plan. And we'll talk more about that in our meeting format in a minute. Any questions on this page before I go off of ordinary administration? Have I missed anything that you all think is significant, needs to be added? All right. So let's talk now about that checklist. So this is really taking the branch off the internal controls. So the diocese has, and you were given a copy of it, and we've been giving this out at the Parish Financial Review Program, kickoff meeting. I know Mike Halsema takes it to every one of his kickoff and wrap-up meetings to the parish to make sure. And basically what it is, if a parish will look at these areas, oversight in the budget, financial reporting, oversight of the internal control system, oversight of auxiliary groups and special events, and then the payroll and payroll compliance. If they will break that up into groups, focus on the areas maybe that they had the most findings, and then devise a plan within the Finance Council where you're just going to go and provide compensating controls, you're going to review and kind of give guidance on those areas. And maybe what you'll have to do before you give that guidance is bone up on the policy to make sure you understand the facets of it. Again, one of the biggies that we see is little areas that are missed on the tamper bag policy. So finance councils can surely help out in that area and then provide oversight, right? Any questions? Yes, sir.
On the payroll for when you look at stipends, how are stipends supposed to be handled? Some stipends, I understand, go through the payroll. So if a church would be paying the payroll taxes on a stipend that they might never ever see a dollar from, and then some other stipends might not go through the payroll, and that wouldn't be in compliance with the law. So is there a policy on the right way to handle those?
Well, if Teresa Simon were here, she would tell me everything has to run through payroll, right? That's first and foremost. So everything that's paid out to an employee needs to run through payroll. The priests are a little different with respect to that. Depending on his status or his classification, all the priests have dual classification. They're both independent contractors and employees of the parish, right? So they may receive stipends from other parishes, and that's what they work and report with their accountant each year. But anything that's collaborated and communicated are shared priests across parishes. What we always recommend is that you pay the parish, whoever's running payroll for that priest, pay that parish and let them run those stipends through there.
Okay, but what about music directors?
Music director, well, there's the threshold for a contractor. If they break the $600, $599 annual, then they need to also, either be on payroll or you're going to give them a 1099.
Okay, so I'm saying the music director will get the stipend. It'll run through payroll. The church will be paying the taxes on that payroll, but they won't receive any of the money from that. So, I mean, if there's a lot of music stipend, that's an expense.
Right. I think Debbie Lougheed's been working a little more closely with some of our parishes on this. Debbie?
I think it's a good idea to run that information through Teresa Simon and the Office of Human Resources with respect to payroll. Because there's certain requirements. Is your music director, on staff, and should he be receiving stipends directly through? And if there is, then that money does need to run through, the parish. So I think these questions might be a little deep for the Finance Council meetings, but we'd be happy to talk to you afterwards, and then we can give you the rules with respect to the various different stipends as it relates to outside of priests.
Right.
From, I think, human resources perspective, stipends should be really just defined with priests in terms of receiving stipends from other parishes. And then there's some very defined human resource and payroll rules that support that. So I'll get with you afterwards.
Very good. That was a good question, because that was an area of oversight. So hopefully with central payroll, a lot of your responsibility for oversight is going to diminish, right? Because you'll be more reviewing what the process is in place. So I'm going to go to extraordinary administration now. So extraordinary acts of administration will require additional circumstantial expertise, discussed in the membership presentation. So really, it's these areas. These are the big items. Under construction, they're building something. Under major renovation, major maintenance, those areas. So really what involves in this is if you're building or doing a major renovation, you're going to be looking at this timeline right here. You're going to have 3 approvals that you're going to work with the pastor, coordinate with design and construction, and also be helping with respect to your finance council. So those are 3 important areas that your expertise, or having that circumstantial expertise on your finance council, is going to be very, very helpful. And really the main thing, even if a finance council doesn't have that expertise among every member, the thing they can help is managing the expectations and keeping everybody in I would just say it, in the information flow. And that's going to be ongoing communication. It's going to be working to figure out the project funding and financing, and then eventually going to construction. And it's so important that the finance council participate in that process, understand, and you're there kind of helping to look at the recurring revenue streams, look at the payment streams for the anticipated loans or the capital campaign or whatever you're going to need to put together. And this is one of those areas on the circumstantial experience and expertise that I want to highlight one parish. I put a shade sail right here because that was the last project I worked with them on. And basically there's one finance committee that has a member that is figured out our policy the way it's supposed to be done. And so whenever they have a project, boom, they call design and construction and say, do you have any vendors? Who should I be working with? Who should I contact? Next they're going to do that vetting process, making sure that they understand what the cost of it's going to be. And they do have a building committee locally, but this individual is the point person that I always deal with. The next is once they have everything identified and they've looked at it as a committee and said this is the way we want to go, then they reach out and they start providing quotes, they start providing a draft letter, they work all through this, and then at the end, whenever we have a look at it kind of off the record, not formally being submitted, but looking if there's any policy exceptions or areas, then what happens is they go to the pastor, explain everything, give them an update, and then send over the request letter, and it goes to finance council. It's always been very streamlined and very easy. Does the parish have that expertise on its staff? No. But this finance committee member provides that. So that's a really great example how you can help. That's also in this diocese, we have over $1 billion of property, and you can imagine the deferred maintenance that exists out there. So sometimes it's not even construction, it's the renovations and the major maintenance that are gonna impact where you can provide that expertise. Any questions on extraordinary acts and how you can help? Yes, ma'am.
Get the design, development, and construction and funding in place, working through the diocese.
Right. Kevin Casey's sitting back there. He sees that more from a global perspective. Kevin, could you give us a little feedback on those areas?
Is your question on...
I've garnered one. I have a roof that needs to be repaired. From the facility report that we received, the diocese put a ROM of it of $50K. Okay, went to our roofer that we use. They came back with a proposal. We're going to have to come to the diocese to get approval for that funding. Now, if I have to go through the design and development and get your project managers involved and all this other stuff, how much do I have to tack onto that proposal?
So for roofing projects, first of all, as far as the proposed or the Owen Tracy report, just to kind of back up to explain that. So across the diocese, we have a roofing program in place that's been in place for 2 years, where Owen Tracy has been out to 2/3 of our campuses and our parishes and schools to have an assessment and make an assessment on roofing as far as what's the extended life, what's the rough order of magnitude for replacement and so forth. And that's really just for planning purposes. So as finance committees, you can advise your pastors as far as when those roofs need to be repaired and then start planning for the funding for those. For a roofing program and a roofing repair or replacement, yes, the roofing contractor does have to be vetted with the design and construction office. However, there is no project manager cost with roofing programs. So our design and construction office will assist you with the vetting process. We'll review the cost, and then we'll proceed accordingly and get the documents signed by the bishop, but there's no cost added to that. I did want to make a mention, you mentioned the Owen Tracy report and the roofing report. For those parishes and schools that had the Owen Tracy report 2 years ago, we've seen a substantial increase in construction costs and material costs based on the last 2 years of hurricanes. So just, I guess, the awareness is just be aware that those ROMs that were in the report could be off by quite a bit, because we've seen some actual costs come in over the past month that is 100% of what the rough order of magnitude was, just based on the increased material cost.
All right, if there are no other questions on extraordinary, let's go to alienation. And Father John, correct, oh, you're getting on the phone, never mind. So if I misspeak, Father, keep me in line, okay? So basically the takeaway on alienation is that it's a sale or disposition of temporal goods in excess of the prescribed limits, requires written approval of the bishop according to Canon Law 1291, and disposal of historical property or assets that would affect the stable patrimony of the parish also requires written approval of the bishop, and then just contact the Dawson Finance Office. So the real takeaway here, I just wanted to point out for you all, is that, you know, we have our buildings, and we have our art, stained glass windows, things like that, furnishings, and then up here, I guess we have art. So that kind of makes up the church. But really, the takeaway for me on this point, and I think this is why it's so important, you as Finance Council members, is it isn't the building, but right there's the church, all those people. It's the people that make up the church. It's just the buildings that provide a place for us to worship. And so if we were to do something that would harm that stable patrimony, those buildings, and we could cause harm to the faithful with respect to their outlook on the church and such. Is that a good way to look at it, Father? Or accurate? So I think that as Finance Council members is so important. You know, we can provide that guidance and support to the pastors so that those missteps don't happen, so as to not cause scandal, and not harm the parishioners in terms of their psyche and understanding of the church. And that's really, for me, that's the takeaway on alienation. Any other questions on alienation or comments? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Michael, just how about the reverse of alienation? People, for example, wanting to donate things to the parish. Should the Finance Council be involved in that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like I'll repeat it, which basically is, you know, the reverse of alienation, people donating things to the parish. Should the Finance Council be involved? I would say yes. If I were a pastor at a parish and somebody said, hey, I want to give you this, then maybe that's where Father reaches out to that one individual, that the chair even, that he could say, hey, let's talk about this. Is this something we want to do? I will tell you, we get a lot of donations of raw land, but it's not big raw land, it's lots. It's lots in inactive subdivisions, and people want to unload it on us. And they want us to give them a letter that states the exact price of what they gave for it, but that's not the price of what it's selling for right now. So they're wanting to use us as that. And oftentimes, we've even had mobile homes given to us and all those things. The diocese has a gift policy, and in there it lists the items that are prohibited. Now, we have in the past, one of the big prohibited items is mobile homes. But we have had some in the past where we got a real estate opinion. It was very movable, and we did take it. But it's not. It's one of those areas that need to bring pause and review before we accept anything. All right. On the next slide, this is really kind of the overview with respect to roles and responsibilities. And I think the most important thing that the Finance Council does is works collaboratively with the pastor, managing expectations bringing them into with reality. And then here, this circumstantial expertise, I put a kind of a timeline or an arc here. If you have a new parish finance council, with respect to where you want to go, you want to drive and support improvement with the pastor to this level, right? But you have to start slow, and you have to identify those areas that you can provide value in quickly and get some wins, and then keep building off of that. So it doesn't matter if you're building your finance council, if you're building the church, a new church, or if you're building a renovation project, whatever. The finance council should be there growing with the parish to support and be at those stages that they need. And then as well, they should be there supporting to come up with a long-term financial plan for the parish, so that as finance councils change, there's that corporate knowledge, if you will, that carries on forward with the finance council with the parish to the next finance council, rather. Any questions? If not, here's our questions for our group discussion. So does the parish have a separate pastoral and finance council? Is there cross-pollination with the pastoral council and key ministries? Does the finance council include expertise to assist with items of extraordinary administration? Does the finance council assist with the annual report to the diocese and also to the parishioners? Does the finance council review the fiscal year budget? If necessary, is there a budget subcommittee to support the budget preparation? Does the finance council understand the parish's accounting practices and review financial reports? And again, that would be whether you're on shared services or you have your local accounting team. Does the finance council periodically review the internal controls, paying particular attention to areas identified in the parish review? And does the finance council have and review the checklist of major finance council activities? We focused on that a ways back, and I think, Mike, we referred to the review program. So if you have any questions on that, come on up. Other than that, does the finance council include circumstantial expertise appropriate with their present development phase? So there's your questions. Have a good discussion. We're very fortunate to have Bishop Noonan here, and he's going to say a few words before we go into our discussion, okay? So if I have your attention for the bishop.
Wow, I am impressed that you're so quiet, you know? It's like when the principal comes, everybody's shh, shh, shh. But anyway, first of all, thank you for being here this morning. It is really, it does me good in my heart on this 50th anniversary of the diocese yesterday, but to realize how much we have grown to see so many people in this room. We were joking yesterday when they made the announcement of the new diocese, there were 3 people here for the announcement. That's how small the Diocese of Orlando was 50 years ago. We made the announcement yesterday and we had 300 or 400 people here, so we are growing. But today you are here for another dimension. You're here because of finances. And sometimes when we talk to pastors, they don't want to talk about money. Jesus said it best, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar, and to God the things that are God. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to take care of what God has given us. And one of those areas is dealing with properties, buildings, looking to the future, planning for the future. So first of all of you who are here today, you have some financial experience. Some of you have lots of financial experience. And I would say to the priest, thank you for being here, because hopefully you will learn a little, because, when I was made rector of the seminary, I had no idea of a balanced budget. So I can tell you, if you have a pastor and he tells you he knows what a balanced budget is, say, okay, Father, tell me what you know, because you'll find out. I'm not making fun of you guys who are pastors here today, but just reminding you, I don't want you to be CPAs. My pastors, I want you to be priests of God. But at the same time, you need to know what it is, if you're in the red or the black. And now, what does that mean? That means you people have to tell the pastor when he's in the red, and you can congratulate him when he's in the black. That's okay. But just be aware you need to guide our priests. Help them. Encourage them. So that's why I'm so happy to see so many of you here today. And what does it come to? It comes, first of all, it shows again that we have to be transparent. One of the most important things today is people are concerned about where their money goes. I was a pastor once, and I used to say, we need to be able to tell the people. You know, the good old days was wonderful. The pastor would get up and say, we need a new roof. So we'd collect all the money for the new roof. And 20 years later again, we'd get up again and say, we need a new roof, and people would all give the money. You can't do that today. People want to know what's happening. Now, you don't have to go into detailed budgets, but you as the finance board members have to be able to help the people understand the needs of the parish. One of the things I have really truly asked our finance office here at the diocese, some people are going crazy, we have a thing called shared services. Some of you have heard about it. And people said, oh, the diocese want to take control of all your money. Well, let me tell you what happened. This is what happened. And he's right here beside me. People would come before the diocesan review board, or they'd come before the diocese finance board, or they'd come before the parishes, the diocesan finance council about a new building. And then we'd have to get the books, and we'd have to look at the books. Oh my God, Michael Zerka would spend 3 weeks trying to get the finance of the parish so that it was a uniform system. So we discovered everybody was using their own formula. It was easy, but sometimes when it came to present it to the diocesan finance board, all of these people are CPAs, and they're all saying, I can't make head nor tail of this. So Michael Zerko spent weeks and weeks trying to put everything together so that we could present it to the review board, the finance review board, so that we could make decisions for you. So we could help you if you wanted to build something, that we could at least say you have the money, or you don't have the money, or this is what we can do. That was the first thing. The second thing we discovered was, I discovered going around to parishes, the finance board, I would meet them and say, Father, will you tell me what's going on? And I'd say, what do you mean? Well, we have meetings, and now we know we have this problem and this problem and this problem. And I discovered then that really, truly, they were not getting correct or accurate figures. Because there was issues again. It was getting more and more complicated. Or I heard, bookkeepers going back to the pastor and saying, oh, the diocese is making us do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And then I'd say to the pastor, we're not making you do anything, but now you have standards to fulfill for the federal government. Oh, really? They never told me that. Or we were going to court because of workman's compensation, or because of somebody who retired and the bookkeeping wasn't correct and the person didn't get their full benefits. So now we have to go to court. So these are the things that I kind of looked at in my own mind, and I said, Michael and Kevin, what do we do to make life easy for the people, for the parishes, for the pastors, for the bookkeepers? So we came up with this shared services. We will do the bookkeeping, and it's uniform across the board. It will help too, hopefully, with your audits, when you're audited, because it can be done, it's all on computer. Before they even come to visit you, they can see how things stand. The other thing it does that some of the pastors don't realize, it makes the pastor take a little bit more responsibility, because now he has to sign off on every bill. In other words, he has to review the payments. He can't just say the bookkeeper takes care of all the bills. Now you have to review, you have to initial everything that needs to be paid. And I think that's good. I discovered that when I was a rector for the first time, when I found out the water bill or the electricity bill was so much. And I had to share it with the seminarians, or we share it with other people. That gives you, in a sense, not that you are a bookkeeper, But you, I'm talking to the priest now, you are aware that how much money goes out every month on those utilities. Because you become much more responsible. You don't have to worry about all the other little details, but at least you're aware that this is important for me to know the bottom line. Or you won't come up to me and say, Bishop, we want to build a new whatever it is. We want to extend the church. But Father, what is your financial situation? Oh, we got the money, we got the money. And we look at the books. Yeah, they got 200,000 in the bank. The building's going to cost 2 million. But you're going to give me the money. You're going to give me the money, aren't you, Bishop? Let me think about it. I won't even think. I say, Father, I don't have the money. Because I have bills to pay too. I don't want to get into how our finances work in the Chancery office, but we have bills to pay, and let me tell you, they are bills to be paid. They're not 1,000, they're millions. And they are all worked out for the future. So what I would ask of you, the lay people, be honest with yourself, be honest with your pastors, and be honest with your people who you serve every day. That's all you have to do. And let us help you. Let the diocese help you. As I said, that's what shared service is about. It's not taking the power away from you, but it's hopefully making it easier for all of us when it comes to things like what is the actual budget, or when you're being audited every so many years, things hopefully will become a little easier. And also when you have a finance board meeting, you can have up-to-date reports. You can look at the balance sheet. You can say, okay, this is what happened. Or why did this happen? Why do we have excess? Or why don't we have enough? What's happening, Father? What are the decisions for the future? Father might need a new bell for his church. But Father, we need a new air conditioning. But I want the bell. No, Father, I think it's better that we get the air conditioning because the people won't come to church. That's been practical, but that's sometimes what I hear. You know, we can do things, but we have to have a real understanding. The other thing I think is going to be very helpful for the future that we're trying to do is to have deferred maintenance worked out. You know, I learned the first thing about business was when I became a pastor. The day you buy a new air conditioner is the day you start saving for the next air conditioner. You don't kind of get up 15 years later and say, we need a new air conditioner. You have depreciation accounts. What are they? Do you know what they are, pastors? I'm looking at the priest now. Don't give them a hint. It means you have to save every year and every month, so that when the rainy day comes, you're not in trouble. How about your overages for your OCA? What did I make you do with that? 1/3 of it goes into the rainy day. 1/3 of that money, because otherwise what happens when we have a hurricane? You have a deductible. Well, what's a deductible? Father, it is the money we need to put up before we put the new roof back on the church. Well, the diocese is going to pay for it. No, we're not. Because I don't have the money. So these are the little things we have to teach one another and help one another. So all I can say today is thank you for being here, and thank you for all the good work you do. And hopefully we can continue to work together, not only to work together to spread the good news of Jesus Christ, but also to share the good news that what we receive graciously from the generosity of the people. And we're also able to say to the people, we have spent it well. And we've spent it not only well, but we can show you how well we have spent it. So thank you again. Blessings on all of you. Have a good summer. I hope you get out of here soon. How many more hours?
2 more.
2 more hours, so enjoy. Take care. God bless. I said, do I go out the back door or the front door?
Of course, I said the front door. Thank you very much, Bishop. So let's go into our table discussions and give us some of the takeaways. So let's just start with, the cross-pollination of the Pastoral and Finance Council. Did this spark any conversation? How about the circumstantial expertise at the parish? Do you have the right members? Do they have the right backgrounds? And are they leading in there for ordinary acts of extraordinary administration? So, I'll just repeat it. So the question is, what if we have 6 members? Well, one, we always recommend that you have an odd number of members, right? Even though when you look at the size and what you should, was that in this hold on one second. That was in the prior presentation in terms of size. You would want to have an odd number because there's always going to be recommendations being made, right? So that way, but then the other reason you would have more members, and you may go beyond the 9, would be one for that circumstantial expertise that we spoke of in here, this presentation, but also to provide support in other areas. Does your Finance Council review the checklist? I'll be quick so we only have a few more minutes. Does the Finance Council review the checklist for major activities? Are y'all looking at that? Did that come up in the conversation? It's really hard to follow the bishop.
I just had a question from our finance committee who couldn't attend. On the oversight of internal controls, number C, as far as the vendor list for any unusual items, I guess they were trying to figure out what are they actually looking for?
Right, with respect to the financial. So if you're uninsured services, one of the reports that we make available is going to be the vendor list. And the idea would be to look at any new vendors and kind of the reason why. A few times in the diocese where we've had fraud, it's been in the setup of vendors. At the business manager meeting last week, we spoke about phishing and contracts, and some of our parishes have fallen prey to that. So that would be an opportunity to take a look at the vendors and just use it as a compensating control. So if you don't have a process for new vendors, this would be a good opportunity to flag it and then to get them to take a look at it and provide some of their recommendations with respect to, a process for adding and oversight. Does that make sense? Does that help? Any other questions? Any other takeaways that you want to share with the group?
One item that our Finance Council works on is fundraisers and solicitations requests. So, and that's a canon law of 1265, where they actually anybody who wants to come into our parish and ask for anything, whether it's internal ministries or external, has to have approval from the Finance Council.
Very good. Any other comments before we take a break for lunch and for? Yes, Father.
Following that, when we do have the love collections, as they've been dubbed, who counts the money? Does the group come in? Do the normal counters handle it? Do we follow the normal procedure of?
That's a really good question. Anything that's taken up at the parish in terms of any collection, any offertory, whether it's for a visiting missionary or a second collection, like you just said, I think you phrased it, a love collection, something like that. That should be an extra set of tamper bags that go to Mass, and that should follow the normal count team process. So those bags would go to the count team, be reviewed to make sure everything's intact, no tampering. Cut them open, and then let them count it and provide the level. And then your accountant should record what those amounts are so that you're able to clear them out once you've collected all the money. Sure. But the safest thing to do is always run it through your Finance Council. That's why it would be a great setup for you all for the checklist that we spoke of in this section, to have a review of the count team and the tamper bag process as part of your normal Finance Council duties and oversights that you provide. All right, so anything else? Yeah, Michael Hausma.
Just real quick before lunch, again, from an audit perspective, we've seen the parishes that do implement that checklist and follow that checklist and divide those duties up among their finance council are a lot more successful, a lot less findings when it comes to the reports by following that checklist. And I always say the checklist should be done every year, not just every 3 years, but every year. Follow the checklist. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so if you look at, thank you very much, Michael.